What's going on, guys? Crazy Ken here, and I have made a fully new channel where I'm going to be talking about books. And I pretty much started this because of the fact that I asked a question on Facebook of if I was going to start a channel on books, would anybody like the idea? And for most people, they pretty much said that they like it. And by most people, I'm talking about 8 of my friends. And some of them actually like the idea of me talking about books, and they actually like the idea of a YouTube channel that talks about books. So guys, thank you so much for giving me the confidence to go ahead and start this channel and do something new and to give me more of a hobby and use YouTube to pretty much go into those hobbies, because I love reading books as much as I love playing video games. And I'm pretty much definitely excited to be talking about books here on this channel, because books definitely I enjoy. When it comes to video games, I like video games more if they have a story and so on, but that's why I pretty much turn to books, because books are definitely great, whether it's manga, whether it's a novel, whether it's like a graphic novel or anything of that sort. Anything that has a good story, I'll pretty much sit down and read it. And I want to thank everybody so much for getting me here. So let's go on with the video. So for those of you that haven't been taking a look at my gaming channel, which is Crazy Kent Gamer, you know that I'm pretty much a huge Spider-Man fan, and that when Insomniac pretty much released their game, which was Spider-Man back in 2018, I was excited like everybody else. Like, I was built on the hype. I was pretty much you know, paying pre-orders every chance I got, paying off $60 and everything. I mean, there was a statue set, but I pretty much didn't feel like getting a damn statue. But I was paying it off weekly, making sure that $60 was paid off. And right when I finally got the game in my hand, I was pretty much playing it, and I'm still playing it even to this day. It's a fun game, and in my opinion, it's probably like the best Spider-Man game that was ever released to this day. Like, we haven't had a great Spider-Man game since, and it's great that Insomniac pretty much pulled off all the stops and are pretty much giving us a game that is more, you know, more than just a gift to fans of Spider-Man, but it's more of a gift for anybody who's pretty much waiting for a Spider-Man game for that long amount of time. But that's not what else Insomniac pretty much is giving us. No. Partnered with Titan Books, they pretty much released a sort of a prequel, if you will, based off of the web slinger himself, which is called Marvel Spider-Man Hostile Takeover by David Liss. Now, this book was pretty much published and released a month before Insomniac pretty much released their Spider-Man game. And it pretty much shows, because it's the official prequel to the Blockbuster action game, as it was pretty much written in the back. So, as we already know, there's a lot of plot elements and stuff that has been left out of the game, and it was pretty much more of a narrative. Like, for example, Spider-Man has been fighting Wilson Fisk for as long as he's been Spider-Man, but that story has never been touch bases on. We know that he's been fighting Fisk and everything, and we already know that the beginning of the game is finally him taking down Fisk after 8 long years of pretty much fighting this guy. And we already know who Wilson Fisk is. He's not only a big Spider-Man supervillain, but he's also a big villain of Daredevil as well. If you've been watching the Netflix series, or if you've seen the one with Ben Affleck, you already know Wilson Fisk is already a bad guy. So, of course, Spider-Man's been fighting Wilson Fisk for the longest time, but we never really get a glimpse of that. We heard, you know, stories about it from MJ's perspective, from Spider-Man's perspective, even from, like, Wilson Fisk's perspective, even though that he was pretty much like the comic foil of the game. I wouldn't even say he was a comic foil. I think that he was more of the stepping stone that pretty much got things started, because as the game starts off, we see Spider-Man swinging over the Fisk Tower to pretty much help out with the police and making the arrest with Fisk and pretty much taking him down. And while taking him down, the crime in the city goes out of control and everything like that. The thugs are pulling up armed robbery in the daytime and so on and so forth, and then that pretty much sets off more events that happen in the game as it progresses and everything. But we never really got a chance to take a look at Spider-Man and Fisk's hatred towards each other and where that stems off of, and how did we get to this point in the game. Well, fortunately, the book pretty much explains it all, and honestly, it took me a while to finish this book. I bought this book way back in like November, and this was like 2 months after I finished everything in Spider-Man, got a 100%, got the platinum, finished all the DLCs and everything like that, to the point where it was like there was nothing left of Spider-Man for me to play except for the new suits that were coming out with it. But other than that, it was nothing else, and I was just mostly making videos off of it. And then when I went to the store, I saw that they pretty much had this book at the local Barnes and Noble that I pretty much shop at. So I pretty much picked it up for, and it was a good price too. It was like $7.99, because most of these books, and they're like small books, most of these books are literally like around like $8 and so you could just walk in and pretty much get yourself a copy for like $8 in paperback. So it's not really all that bad. And also there was other Marvel books that were pretty much sold in there, but I'm not gonna get into that right now. Right now I'm gonna go ahead and talk about Hostile Takeover, and you know, just to run things down and to give you guys a bit of a warning, there's are going to be spoilers, as I'm going to be talking about some major plot points in the book. So if you don't want to be spoiled on the book, I'm going to leave a time code where you can pretty much skip ahead to the point of the video where I tell you how I feel about the book, if it's worth buying, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to be doing a rating system. I'm not going to be doing this thing where I'm going to be rating the story, rating the book based off of the story, based off of the characters, based off of the plot, and so on and so forth. I'm just going to be talking to you guys about the book and what I enjoy about it, what I don't enjoy about it, so on and so forth. Okay? Okay. All right. Let's get right into it. So as the book pretty much starts off, Spider-Man pretty much does his usual thing. We're pretty much introduced to him as he's patrolling the city. And I like how the book starts off when he says, New York City had everything. And that was usually a plus, but not as much when that something was a snake store. Or was it still a plus? So basically, this is being told from Spider-Man perspective, but at the same time, not Spider-Man perspective. It's more of the third person, and this is what I like about the author's work. It's like he's telling the story, but he's also telling it through the character's point of view. It's like he's not saying that MJ said this to me. No, it's more like he's saying what the characters are saying, like Peter said this, but he also thought this. So basically, it's helping us get more in tune with the characters and helping them out, helping us understand them more and more. And that's what I like about it, because now we understand more of the characters. We already know who Spider-Man is, but we need to get used to this version of Spider-Man. This is a whole different version of Spider-Man, and this is a way different Spider-Man that we've seen in other media and other iterations of him. Just the same with Mary Jane and everyone else, apparently. So at the beginning of the book, it's just your normal Spider-Man things. He pretty much uses police scanners to pretty much try to stop crime as much as he can, tries to keep his city safe, you know, the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man biz. And then all of a sudden he comes across this small criminal named Andy. So he pretty much interrogates Andy, and probably like the funniest thing that Andy said was, "You're one of those superheroes." And then Spider-Man responds with "So is the 'who are you' more of a philosophical question?" And then he goes on to say, "Sorry, I just get nervous sometimes, you know." He goes on to say, "Okay, let's start over. I'm Spider-Man." And he was like, "I thought you were Daredevil." He was like, "Do I look like Daredevil?" And then Andy goes on to say, "Kind of, but kind of not. Less horns and more webs."
No shit.
I never got that when I was reading that. I was laughing. I thought it was funny, but I never got that. How do you think he's Daredevil if he doesn't have the horns? Plus, most of the time, Daredevil carries around sticks, and he has no inkling of blue on his suit. He tells Spider-Man that he was pretty much doing a job for his brother and everything. So when Spider-Man confronts him about it, he tells him that he was going to meet his brother at abandoned construction site, and that Spider-Man should go ahead and check it out if he wants to pretty much confirm that. So Spider-Man heads over to the construction site, and then he not only meets a couple of thugs, but he also meets an imposter who he couldn't even see in the dark. But there was one crazy thing. The imposter fought exactly like he did. Like, it was kind of like he was It was kind of like he was fighting a mirror version of himself. Because it was like every time when Spider-Man would make a move, the imposter would pretty much counter that with another move. It was like fighting yourself in a mirror, except the mirror can pull off moves faster than you can. So Spider-Man pretty much lost the fight. The imposter was gone, and when he went back to see Andy and get more information, Andy winds up dead. And this is where the main plot of the whole Spider-Man plot pretty much comes into play, because in the game you meet Captain Yuri Watanabe, but here she's a lieutenant and she meets Spider-Man in this book. And I like that because of the fact that the one thing that got them to work together was a mysterious murder. And then the funny thing was when Spider-Man and her meet, she like a cop, she has him at gunpoint, he has his hand raised, and the funniest thing that he says was, "I didn't kill him." But then she goes on to say, "Of course you didn't, because otherwise why would the hell would you come back here in the first place?" So obviously she already knew Spider-Man was innocent in the first place, and she is definitely one of the many cops out of many years that actually trusted Spider-Man to literally not only shoot him, but not arrest him at the same time. So they pretty much meet up at a secluded place, they talk and everything, and Yuri already know that the imposter was not Spider-Man on a couple of cases, but one that was probably the running joke of the book, and I'm definitely sure it's the running joke of the book, is the fact that she said that the imposter's costume, his webs were too close together. And I thought that was freaking hilarious. Because imagine, it's New York City, people got too much stuff to do. I'm assuming. I've never been a New Yorker. I never even lived in New York. But I do know New York is big, and I know it's busy all the time. But imagine somebody being a huge Spider-Man fan or knowing enough about Spider-Man to say that that guy's an imposter because his webs are too close together. It doesn't look like anything like Spider-Man's costume. Imagine that. That's freaking hilarious. So Yuri and Spider-Man pretty much go through the security cameras that pretty much recorded the streets and everything, and they see Andy after Spider-Man leaves. He's about to walk home, and then the imposter shows up out of nowhere, gets Andy's attention, and I guess Andy turns around and notices the guy's voice. The imposter holds up a gun, shoots Andy, and Andy is pretty much, before he was killed, he was pretty much surprised and everything. So Spider-Man is pretty much like already distraught because there's an imposter out there running around in his costume, and he just committed a murder in his name. And the worst thing about it is that the victim pretty much thought to himself, Spider-Man just shot me. Now imagine being a superhero like that, and you're already in warm water. Like, it's no big secret that New York is like split on Spider-Man. They think some think he's a hero, others think he's a menace, and the worst one out of both of them is J. Jonah Jameson. With this kind of thing, Jameson can pretty much use against Spider-Man, and that just makes the whole thing worse. But I'm jumping ahead of the gun, so let's go ahead and talk about what's going on right now. So Yuri pretty much asked Spider-Man his side of the story, and he tells her everything that happened previous, how he made it up with Andy. Andy gives him information. He goes to the construction site. He fights the imposter at the construction site. He gets back and Andy's dead. So when Yuri pretty much decides to pretty much do research on the construction site, of course she gets pissed off and mad, and Spider-Man asks her what's the problem, and she's like, because the construction site is owned by Wilson freaking Fisk, the Kingpin of Crime. So it's revealed in chapter 5 that Spider-Man goes into detail that after he took on the mantle of Spider-Man, he has spent like months, literally dedicating months to taking down Wilson Fisk and exposing him. He collected files, he collected laptop information, he collected like anything that could be incriminating towards Fisk, building up evidence and pretty much trying to have him arrested and so on and so forth. And then the funny thing was that when he had the evidence that he needed and he brought this up, Fisk went to trial for it, and Spider-Man thought that he actually wanted to fight. As it turns out, he was not only like, and this was the part of the book that literally ticked me off more than anything, because with all the evidence, Fisk walked. Like, he was declared innocent and everything, and he just walks. Now imagine Spider-Man sitting there at the TV with his aunt, watching the trial go on, and then he has all the evidence right there, witnesses and everything, And then the bad guy that you spent months getting evidence for he just walks. Like, no punishment, nothing. He just walks, and then he's just gone. And then next thing you know, it was even more ticked off because, like, it ticks me off that much because of the fact that you already know he's the Kingpin of Crime, so you already know he's got a backup plan every single time. So it's like, Spider-Man has evidence. He has means to pretty much, like, change or rearrange the evidence and make it look like it's false report, or if it's not real, or he'll just falsify a document to pretty much make it so. It's one of those. He's one of those bad guys. And if you've been reading comic books for as long as I have, you already know he has the influence to do that. So going on with the story, so Fisk, after the whole court thing, he pretty much leaves New York for a while. And then he comes back and tries to establish himself as a new man. Like, he's no longer violent, and to pretty much make sure that nobody pretty much believes the fact that he's the Kingpin of Crime, he makes himself off as a savior, trying to help the homeless try to find homes and so on and so forth. And, you know, he's trying to establish himself as more of a public figure, kind of like an alibi, just so he can pretty much go on with the stuff that he's usually doing, which is racketeering, which is drugs and weapon trade, basically the whole shebang. So of course Fisk is pretty much behind the whole thing and behind the imposter and everything. And then later on in the story, we go on to realize that the Spider-Man imposter, who will later on be known in the story as the Blood Spider, he is pretty much the Spider-Man imposter going around doing things in Spider-Man's name. He's been going around terrorizing people, killing people, and all of that stuff. And at one point, he even blew up a restaurant, and this was the most devastating thing to Spider-Man in this novel. And the reason why is that, let's talk about Blood Spider for a bit. I didn't know much about this character when I was reading the book. I didn't even know anything about him. And the only reason I know the Spider-Man imposter's name is Blood Spider is because if you look on the back of the book, it pretty much says, will Spider-Man be able to stop Blood Spider? So I did some research, and as it turns out, in the comics, Blood Spider was actually a clone that was pretty much supposed to be trained to be better than the original Spider-Man. I think it's been a long time since I looked back on that. He was supposed to be trained to be better than the original Spider-Man in the means to kill him. But here in the book, it's more like it's just a guy who is sick of pretty much getting pushed around by everybody, and then they pretty much gave him a bunch of experiments and stuff and pretty much get him jacked up and everything, and now he can do the things that Spider-Man can do. He can have the same strength as Spider-Man and so on and so forth. So they pretty much made another Spider-Man, and with that, it gives him the ideology thinking that he is the real Spider-Man, and the one that's been doing this for the past 7 to 8 years is nothing more but an imposter. So his plan is to pretty much do things in the imposter's name, make him look like the bad guy, and when the time is right, he'll kill the imposter and take over his mantle as the new Spider-Man. At least that's what I'm getting at, because the whole time this guy keep saying that I'm the real Spider-Man, I'm the real Spider-Man. I thought he was pretty much a wacko that pretty much broke out of Ravencroft or an asylum or something, but I wasn't far off. He is crazy. And going into his backstory, it's one of those generic bad guys, the bad guy's life sucks backstory and everything like that. But at least it builds up more to his character and why he thinks the world is what it is, and so on and so forth. And this is why I like this character, because of the fact that he's more like the yang to Spider-Man's yin. You get what I'm saying? Because it's like Spider-Man, once he got these powers, he decided to use these powers responsibly and to help people whenever he can. This guy uses his powers to kill people, to terrorize, and to show that he is the big man. He can do whatever he wants, and he has no responsibility or anything that ties him down. And it's like I said earlier, it's like a mirrored version of Spider-Man. He doesn't care, he doesn't have a sense of responsibility, and he doesn't mind killing you if it means that he'll enjoy himself. And that's probably the scariest thing. Could you imagine a universe where Spider-Man can pretty much kill you without a second thought, and he'll just go on about his daily routine? And then there's another somewhat villain that's supposed to be a major foil to Spider-Man, and her name is Echo.
serious?
She wasn't really one of the most popular Marvel characters, kind of like Blood Spider, and you know, she's been thrown into the book just so she can keep the plot moving along and everything like that. I couldn't even remember her story because it was that boring and everything. I mean, if you want to look up her backstory, you can go ahead and do that. You can pause the video and go ahead and look up her backstory. I'm not gonna do it. But other than that, in this story, the Kingpin pretty much killed her father, and then he made it up to look as if Spider-Man did it. And since she lost her father, her life had already gone into a downward spiral. She was already in foster care from foster care. She's already been abused. She's already been mistreated and everything. And because of the fact that the girl is deaf, it pretty much made it harder in life. But over the years, she learned to read lips, and that's how she knows what people are saying. Just as long as she can see your lips and see what you're saying and everything, she can interpret what the hell you're saying and everything. And I thought that was pretty cool. It's like she's deaf and she can't hear, but it's like all she has to do is read your lip movements to know what you say. So it's like if I'm sitting here talking right now, she can understand exactly what I'm saying into this mic. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And she's a strong character, don't get me wrong, because after she was adopted by the Kingpin and made into his assistant and everything, he feeds her the lies saying that Spider-Man was the one who killed her father, making it so that she's the secondary antagonist that Spider-Man has to deal with while he's taking down Fisk. So she spent like literally most of her life training and pretty much building herself up so that she can take on Spider-Man and take him down, which is understandable, but you gotta understand it's like she's a pawn too, and the Kingpin is just using her and everything. Like, let's go ahead and be honest, he's just doing all this just so he can keep Spider-Man busy. But mostly I want to talk about the fact that the book goes more into Peter Parker's life than it does about Spider-Man's heroism. Because if there's one thing that I pretty much enjoy about a Spider-Man story is that we get a glimpse of two sides of the same coin. And Peter Parker's life is, I'm going to be honest, his life is more interesting than Spider-Man in this book. And this book actually does a good job of making me feel that way. Because now we get more of a look into his relationship with Mary Jane. And it's obvious that their relationship was already toxic before the events that happened in the game, because in the game it was already established that they're no longer together and that they broke up. I thought it was mostly because of the fact that she couldn't handle the fact that he was off doing Spider-Man things and pretty much you know, always worried about the fact that he might die, he might get hurt or something like that. But the book goes more into depth of why it led up to the point where they broke up. And that was because of the fact that because he was doing Spider-Man things, and because of the fact that Mary Jane actually wants to do more than just be Spider-Man's girlfriend. Like, she wants to pretty much be out there, part of the action, and act like she can actually make a difference in the journalism degree. Because, you know, she's kind of like the Lois Lane of this Spider-Man universe, and that's what makes me like her more than any other iteration of Mary Jane. I mean, in the comics, she got a more defined personality even before that she found out that Peter was Spider-Man and before they got married. But even then, she had a likable personality to the point where it was like, okay, she's supportive, she's beautiful, she pretty much helps out Peter when he's Spider-Man or when he's just normal. She's the perfect girlfriend material and everything. But then when the Sam Raimi movies came out, she became nothing more but a walking Barbie doll that pretty much gets in trouble every 5 minutes. And I'm sitting here like, what the absolute hell? Thank God they took her out of Amazing Spider-Man, because I would have lost my shit. But hey, in Spider-Man Homecoming, she's cute. But other than that, in this version, Mary Jane is not only supportive, but she's also helpful and everything. And also, she just keeps telling Peter, I can understand that you're worried about me because I don't have spider powers and everything, but you can't keep smothering me just because of the fact that I don't have spider power. And that's what I get, and that's what I understand about it. Because you know she wants to help, you know she's helpful, and you know she could use her job as a journalist and, you know, as a reporter to pretty much get more information and go places that Spider-Man can't always go because of his vigilante status. And instead of pretty much being supportive of her the same way she's supportive of him, Spider-Man just acts more like a controlling boyfriend throughout the entire relationship. Like, it's not like Christian Grey bad or Edward from Twilight bad, but it's bad to the point where it's like MJ is like getting really sick and tired of it. She knows that everything he does is dangerous, and he keeps smothering her and keeps trying to protect her when really she doesn't need protecting. She can take care of herself. And I can understand that because, every journalist who goes after Fisk, they always wind up missing, or they wind up dead and pretty much like buried somewhere else, or wind up in a river and shit like that. But other than that, she knows who Spider-Man is. So basically, if anything happens to her, you're the first one to know. You are the boyfriend, dumbass. How did you forget that she's your girlfriend and that she can contact you as quick as possible and then you're on the move? Like, what the actual what? But other than that, it gives us more detail about the relationship. They love each other, but one side wants the other and the other side can't give it to them, and vice versa and everything like that. And then we get into his relationship with Harry. Yes, Harry shows up in the book, and we get more in depth with their relationship with each other as best friends and everything. Harry's the sarcastic, snooty rich boy like we've seen a ton of times, but in this one he's actually more supportive of MJ and Peter's relationship. Like, he's literally telling Peter, dude, she's a grown-ass woman, can you back off for like maybe like a couple of meters? And he keeps telling him that MJ's a grown woman, MJ can take care of herself, MJ don't need no man unless she needs a man. So just back off, man. Just give her some space. But you know how Peter is. Peter's always a worrywart. He knows that if being Spider-Man means his enemies will come after the people that he loves and everything. And he knows that Wilson Fisk is probably the most dangerous out of all of them. So he'll come after her, which is understandable. But like Harry says, that MJ can take care of herself, and she's been doing that for the longest time. So, dude, why are you this worried? And the sad thing is, about this book, we don't really get much more out of this, because I would love to see Peter and Harry spend more time with each other, and that way they can talk and everything. Then we could get more in depth with the relationship between Harry and his father compared to Harry and spending time with his friends and whatnot. But we don't really get that. We see that Harry doesn't like his dad, because there was in one chapter where he and Peter go out to lunch, and then his dad, Norman Osborn, who is the mayor in both the book and the game, he comes in out of nowhere and pretty much sits with them while he's bringing paparazzi and shit everywhere, and Harry's just pissed off and everything. We already know that Harry doesn't like his dad. He's sick of his dad. He's sick of the fact that his dad pretty much uses his money and business tactics, shady business tactics, I may say, to get what he wants, especially a father-son relationship, which is not going to happen, so on. And we get a glimpse of Martin Lee, like, maybe like 3 times. He was only mentioned in the book like 3 times, even though that he was built up to be the main bad guy of the game itself. But we don't hardly see him at all. We get one instance in the book where he and Peter interact, and that was when they finally met, because his aunt has been working at the Feast home shelter for the longest time now, and he's just now finally meeting Martin Lee. And this, I guess this sets off a foreshadowing that Lee will be the bad guy later on in the game itself. So there's that, and we don't really get much out of his aunt other than the fact that they sit and talk. That's about it. It took me like 5 months to finish this book, mostly due to work and other stuff I was doing on YouTube, but I'm glad to say that I actually enjoyed this book for what it was. And guys, I'm not kidding. This was a really good book. Like, if you're a big Spider-Man fan, or whether you played the game or you haven't played the game, this is definitely a book that any Spider-Man fan can get into. It's just telling the story, does it in a way to where it's like, oh, okay, so that's why this happened in the game, or that's why this was such a big deal in the game. It's like, it provides more clues and answers to all the stuff that people who probably played the game might be asking. But when it comes to a regular Spider-Man fan who's either played the game or not, this is pretty much just a novel that any Spider-Man or superhero fan could sit down and read and enjoy anyway. I can definitely recommend you this book, and I can definitely say that this book is definitely worth the read. It's just that there's not really a lot of problems I find with it. I thought it was a great story. I thought everything was wrapped up nicely. It gave us more details about Peter and his relationship with everybody else, as well as his inner psyche as Spider-Man. And then it gave us villains that were not all that popular in Marvel Comics years, but they actually decided to bring back in order to help tell the story and to help build stepping stones of what led to the game. So I actually like that. So yeah, if you guys ever find Marvel Spider-Man Hostile Takeover at your local bookstore, please give it a read. Like, please just give it a chance. I'm willing to bet that you're going to enjoy this book. I know I enjoyed it. I definitely put it on my top list of the best book that's actually based off of a video game. It's definitely worth the read. So with that in mind, guys, I pretty much say that Spider-Man's Hostile Takeover is definitely worth it. I mean, come on, this book is $8. $8. It's definitely worth it. Definitely worth it. But anyway, have you guys ever read Spider-Man Hostile Takeover? What did you think about the story? Do you think there were some things that could have changed about it? Do you think there were some things that were confusing about the story? Did you think that this was the best retelling of the Spider-Man mythos? Whatever you thought about the book, comment below and let me know. And also, if you want to see more videos like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I know it's going to be like really hard work for me to put out more stuff on more than one channel and everything like that, but honestly, as long as I'm doing what I love, I pretty much am gonna enjoy this. But anyway, hope you guys enjoy the book, and if you guys have any suggestions on what other books I should read, whether they be based off of superheroes or whether there's something else and anything, also leave it down in the comments below, because I'm really looking forward to reading more books and everything in my spare time, and I've been spending more time playing video games, so I'm trying to balance that out while going to work. So I'm just keeping myself busy with productivity. But you know, anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.